So we are live. Welcome to the Greatness Engineering Hour show. So it's our second show today. And again, we're going to have a great conversation with a champion. And this time we're going from where we were in Nigeria just before. So we're going back to the US today. And my guest today is an amazing guest. As usual, you know that I always bring you the best. I always bring you people who are actually making a difference, a positive impact in the community, and people who are actually inspiration for a lot of us to help us to go to the next level of our greatness. So who is the guest today? Just gonna, put a picture here. So our guest today is Pastor Sharon. Pastor Sharon is she's a pastor, so she's an author, a mentor, a certified master life coach, and she helps women and men who are suffering with low self-esteem, insecurities, rejection, abandonment, and identity crisis to overcome and walk with confidence into their destiny. So today we're going to focus our conversation on the root of rejection and abandonment. And I think that's one of the subjects that actually gonna help a lot of us with what's happening around the world. And I hope that you're gonna learn a lot from Pastor, and I actually don't doubt that you're gonna learn from her. And she is ready for us. And so I'm gonna get her to come. So get ready, have your notepad or your book, whatever you can get a paper and your pen as well, and make sure you take notes. And for those who are not able to tune in, please share and share for them, and make sure that you share whatever you're gonna learn today, and make sure that you ask them if you can to watch the replay. So let's start, and let's have a great conversation on the root of abandonment and rejection. So don't go anywhere. We am back with Pastor Sharon in a few minutes.
Memories. But as I got older, I started to be more aware of some of the abusive sides of
So, good morning, Pastor Sharon. Good morning. How are you? Welcome to the Greatness Engineering Hour show. It's such a pleasure to have you today. So, how is everything on your side?
Good morning. Good morning to you in Australia and to all of your viewers. I am doing well. Things are a bit rough here in the U.S. Because we're still dealing with COVID-19, but um, as everyone else has, we will recover as well. So excited, excited to be here with you today. Love your show. Love, love, love your enthusiasm and your positive attitude. And I've been watching you and following you, and you do an amazing job just letting others know how they can get the help that they need in whatever area they may be challenged in. So thank you for being such a great, great jewel to the body. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. And for the viewers, I mean, I obviously know you now, but for them, so who is Pastor Sharon? And what is your journey, and how did you come to do what you do right now?
Okay, so my name is Sharon Chislom, and I am a pastor of Rehoboth Church, and I have a ministry for men and women. It's called SDC Ministries. And what we do is we minister to men and women alike who suffer abandonment, rejection, low self esteem, and insecurities. And believe it or not, all of us at some time in our lives have experienced one of those things.
Mm-hmm,
And unfortunately, and maybe fortunately for myself, I had to deal with all of them, all of
mm-hmm,
them. And so, not knowing what to do, not knowing who to turn to at the time, and dealing with it by myself, or not just by myself, let me say with the help of the Lord, because I really did
mm-hmm,
have to have God's help to get through all of those hurdles. And
mm-hmm,
so it was so impressed on my heart that I know that once I am a born again believer, and once I knew that salvation was true, and salvation was affordable to anybody and everybody could be saved, I had this feeling and the desire to go back
mm-hmm,
and get those who look like me, and not just my brown skin. I'm saying those who look like me, who resembled me, who dealt with rejection, who dealt with
mm-hmm,
abandonment, who dealt with identity crisis, who didn't
mm-hmm,
understand and know who they were. And so that's basically what my journey has been. And it has been a journey for over 10 years, to
mm-hmm,
actually pull down all of those walls. Because guess what? Those things were embedded in me at a very early age. And
mm-hmm,
I am 51 now. So can you just imagine? You don't just overcome things in the blink of an eye or
mm-hmm,
automatic. And one of the things that I learned in my journey is when I thought I had conquered something, God showed me that I still had a little more of that thing to deal with. And
mm-hmm,
so that's why I try to assist others with the same way. And it's no shame attached to that,
mm-hmm,
understanding that it's no shame attached
mm-hmm,
to that, even
mm-hmm,
though others may want to make you feel shameful, and you yourself may even feel shameful at a time or a period, but
mm-hmm,
understanding that no, you're not alone. And lots of people deal with this,
mm-hmm.
whether they want to admit it or not.
Yeah. So let's short. Yeah, we have quite a lot of people today at the beginning. So
Hmm.
there's Florence. Florence is watching from Burundi.
Lauren.
So blessing, and we have Karen. Karen, good morning. Good morning, Karen. Thanks for tuning
Karen.
in. We have Caressa. Caressa, hello. Good morning.
Good morning.
And good morning from Karen as well to you, and really really important. So like you said, we in a way, in our life are confronted with rejection and sometimes going to abandonment. So what was the trigger for you? Obviously you went through it and you had all those challenges. What were the trigger, and what is the process that you've actually used, if any, to basically get you to a level where you're really now comfortable and have the right self-esteem to be able to help others.
Okay, thank you. That's a very good question. The first thing was, first off, I had to figure out who I was, and not just who I was from a genealogical standpoint, that's important for people. People want to know where they came from. But I wanted to go a little bit deeper and find out who I was on the spiritual side of things. And that's what my driving force always is. So I had to now start to change my mindset about the things that had been filtered through and into my spirit and into my heart, right? So I had to debunk all of that. I had to now start to tear that down. So where I was told you're ugly, you're not going to be any good and nobody's going to want you and things like that, I had to replace those comments and that tape that kept playing over with things of what the word of God said about me, that I am beautiful, that I am fearfully and wonderfully made, that I am wanted and accepted. And for me, most of my life, I dealt with rejection and abandonment, and I had very low self esteem. So I wanted to find out where this root came from. And one thing that I challenge all listeners to is when something comes up in you, don't be so quick to dismiss it. Figure out where that came from. What is the root cause to that thought? What is the root cause to that feeling, that emotion that's now springing up on the inside of you? And once you identify what that root cause is, whether it's someone didn't like my idea. Well, let's face it. A lot of people won't like your idea and a lot of people won't support you. But did this thing crush you? Did it hurt you so badly that it caused you to retreat? It caused you to go into a cave. That, my friends, is rejection. That is a root of rejection. And when things spring up like that, don't dismiss it. Go back and figure out what is the root cause of this thing. And once you've dug down into that, I wish I could tell you that the journey would stop there, but it doesn't. You have to keep digging. It's almost like peeling an onion, layer upon layer upon layer. The onion didn't grow overnight. The onion had to take root, spring up to the top of the ground, and then begin to grow. And the same it is, it's the same thing with us when we deal with rejection, abandonment, low self-worth, low self-esteem. All of those things are rooted in something that took place in our lives, whether it was when you were a little child, an adult, adolescent, or you were already, say, mature, and maybe you were in your 30s or your 20s, and all of a sudden these things start popping up. For me, these roots of rejection, abandonment, and low self-esteem, they started springing up early in my life. Let's say I was probably in my 20s, but it was at the age, excuse me, at the age of 26 that I started to recognize it. And a gentleman actually said to me, you don't like yourself. You actually don't like yourself. And it struck me to my core, and it made me pause and start thinking about what he was saying. And I said, you may be right. I need to go and take some time to think about this. And that's when the journey really began for me at 26. And as I said earlier, I'm 51. So, over from the span of 26 to the age of about 45, I dealt with unpacking all of that stuff. And it was no fun job for me. It was the downright dirty. And there were a lot of things that I had to face. And those things were about me, not about anyone else.
And that's the most important thing to understand is that, when we identify all of this, is to understand that it's about us and we have to do the work because it's not going to come from somebody else. It's going to come from us. We have to find a way, like you said, to understand who we are really and understand how we're going to make the shift to really, start to understand that it comes with us. We have to love ourselves first before we can actually get people to love us or to love whatever we're doing, and
Yeah.
that's a key thing. So, I mean, obviously, you said it takes a long time. It took you a long time to do that, but now you've been working with people who are actually having the same issue. So how do you, because some of them actually, I don't know what's the process, when they come to you, or do you identify it in a different way? But what do you think is a key thing that what are the key thing that you can say, okay, it's pretty generic in those men and women who are coming, and you have basically something to help them with. What are the key common factor that you see in those people?
Well, first of all, I asked them to do something that some people think is pretty outlandish. I have a mentoring group, and what I asked you to do is write me your obituary. I want to know who you think you are, because that's who we're dealing with. Although people played a part in putting speaking negative over our lives, or introducing us to things that we may not have been comfortable with, but at the end of the day, we have our own responsibility. And I want to know what you think about you. So as I said about that gentleman who said to me, you don't like yourself and you don't love you, it shocked me, but it hit me at my core, and it made me start to go into dig. And so when I ask people to write their obituary and tell me about you, tell me from the beginning when you were born, to the middle part of who you are, and tell me what you think your end is going to look like, because I can look at what you wrote and tell what you're dealing with, because the way you write about yourself, the way you think about yourself, and the way you speak about yourself identifies for me what you are dealing with. So that's my starting point.
That's very important, and that's very powerful as well, because sometimes we actually don't, we always look at outside, what people think about us, what people are doing to us, and and we focus on that, but yet we forget about the most important thing, we spend most of our time with ourselves. So we need to understand who we are. We need to know what we think about ourselves, to know if we really like our own company, because
Yeah.
it's funny, but that's the thing that we have to start with, because we have 24 hours 7 day a week with ourselves, and we need to appreciate this company. So just let's just have another break here in the comment box. So we have
Hey,
Stephanie
Steph.
Forbes, she's here, and Florence is already inspired, and we have Karen as well. Got to understand the root cause of your,
Thank you,
of where
Karen.
you come from. So let's have a small break. We'll have a video of Pastor Sharon, and we'll come back in this, and continue this exciting conversation on the root of abandonment and the rejection. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back in few minutes.
Thank you. Pastor Sharon Chislom, founder of SDC Ministries, author of God's Hidden Treasure, and co-author of He Knows My Name, and Stepping Into Our Territory, Edition 2. She is known for being the real talk teacher and Bible influencer. Every other Saturday, you can catch her on Zoom teaching Cultivation God's Way. Recently, her and her husband, Elder Steve Chislom, launched their church, Rehoboth Church, a place for God's people. Connecting people to God, cultivating the people of God, and collaborating with God's people to influence the kingdom agenda.
So we are back. We are back with Pastor Sharon, and we are focusing our conversation on the root of rejection and abandonment. And we've started already to get some great insight on how to manage, this rejection and abandonment that we feel, and really get us to get to know ourselves, and get to understand that we have greatness inside of us, and we
Yes.
need to focus on this greatness. So I mean, you've talked about, obviously, some of the method that you you use to help people, which is the first step, that we understand who we are, and then make them write their obituary so that they can they can think, focus more on themselves and what they think of themselves instead of what people think about themselves. So in I have one question is, you can work with people, but do you also take into account their environment? Because I know that the environment can be very, very heavy, and whatever, especially on how we see ourselves and what we think about ourselves. Because especially where for women, if we are married, and if we, there's some cultural, in some culture as well, there's some restriction. So how do you address that?
Well, one of the things I think about in that specific arena is I do look at that. I look at your culture. I look at your upbringing. That's why I ask private questions. And I say that this is probably going to be a time where you won't like me. You won't agree with what I'm saying, because when you start peeling off the layers of a person, there's doubt, there's
Mm-hmm.
grief, and they go through 5 stages of that
Mm-hmm.
particular grief. And one of those things is denial. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people deny who they really are at their core.
Mm-hmm.
They identify more with who other people say they are. So when
Mm-hmm.
someone asks them, "Who are you?" they can't tell you. They don't
Mm-hmm.
know, because they're only going to bring about attributes like, "I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm
Mm-hmm.
a sister, I'm this or I'm that." But who are you? Not
Mm-hmm.
what your characteristics are, what your attributes are, but who are you to your at your core? And you, when you think about the atmosphere that you grew up in,
Mm-hmm.
that plays, the environment you grew up in, that plays a lot on
Mm-hmm.
how people are steeped in rejection and abandonment.
Mm-hmm.
If you grew up in a home with a lot of siblings, you're going to have an issue with being
Mm-hmm.
rejected. You're going to have an issue with being some way, shape, form abandoned, or you'll feel abandoned. If you grew up and you were the only child, you feel like you missed out on something else that someone else had,
Mm-hmm.
a person who had a larger family or a sibling that they
Mm-hmm.
could share things with. And so all of those things are factors when you talk about the core of a person and
Mm-hmm.
their mind. So a lot of people can come out of desperate situations and
Mm-hmm.
very bad things like molestation, abuse, verbal, physical, mental, and emotional. They think they can come out of it, but it still be living on the inside of them, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. So
Mm-hmm.
I can change my address, but if I'm still living in the home that I left, then I never moved. You get me? You can
Mm-hmm.
change your address, but did you move? Have you
Mm-hmm.
moved yet? So have you moved here and here, from the abandonment, from the rejection, from the low self-esteem, from the insecurity, from the identity crisis? Have you really moved from that place? And so while people can change their physical address, moving is much harder.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And how do you make them moving? Because it can be very deep. It can be very
Yeah.
deep, and because we start to be, and that's why I was asking about the environment, because we start to be conditioned from day one when we're born. So this environment is actually the structure, armor in a way. And suddenly you're telling me, no, I have to drop all of this and try
Mhm.
to put another something else. So how do you? And how hard it is, because it
Yeah, it's
can,
very hard.
I can imagine that it's very hard.
So it's difficult to move.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to pack, but it's difficult to move.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say this. So let me give you an analogy of an actual moving event. And so you know what goes into that. You know the environment that you live in now, right? And you know the house that you live in. Let's say that that house was in disrepair. It was dilapidated, and they threw a sign up that said it was condemned. and you
Mhm.
had to get out. And that is the picture that I want to paint when it's time to move. So that when
Mhm.
you're in an environment that's condemned and it is hazardous to your health, there's mold spores in there, there's things in there that is causing you to die slowly on the inside. Then you come to grips when they come to your home and they knock on the door and they put the sign up and they say, ma'am, sir, we have to condemn this property. It's no
Mhm.
good anymore, and we need you to move. And you
Mhm.
have attachments, you have associations there, and now you have to associate yourself with that
Mhm.
condemned state. And so, one of the things that I do instruct people to do is get in the mirror and talk to yourself. Self talk is the
Mhm.
best way to help you move from one place to the other because I can't make you move. If the
Mhm.
city puts a sign up and say that you have to move, they can physically come and remove you from the property and make you stand on the outside. But they can't make you move from the sidewalk because that's a public space. But you could very well sit there on the sidewalk and absolutely refuse to move because you're so attached and you're
Mhm.
so used to this type of environment that you absolutely don't know how to move
Mhm.
on. And so, in the steps of moving, in the steps of packing, get in the mirror and tell yourself, it's time for me to move. I can't stay here any longer. I am worth more than what I am giving myself. I have
Mhm.
to get out of here and I have to leave now. And you have to constantly tell yourself, I got to leave. I have to move. It's not an option.
Mhm.
Staying is not an option. That's why I use the analogy of the home being condemned and you're being put out.
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
is how severe it is. But like I said, some people can leave out of the house and stay on the sidewalk because
Mhm.
they absolutely won't break the ties that bind them to that atmosphere. And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
even though it's hard to do, it's doable. But the work has to come from within.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
have to keep telling yourself, it's time for me to move. I have to leave. This place is no good for me.
Powerful, very powerful, because and sometimes we know, and in everything we know that okay, it's not good for us, but because we're so used to it, we are in this comfort zone, and we don't want to be in discomfort, even if we know it's not good for us. And I think that's where we really need to go and talk to a professional, because we can't do it on our own. And sometimes people are reluctant to do that, because talking to a professional is like, accepting that you are dysfunctional. And a lot of people don't want to be seen as dysfunctional, even if that's the case.
Right.
So I mean, you started, your ministry, and really focusing on that as well. How are things going, and how, do you operate, in a way, this the ministry, to address, the rejection and the abandonment, and what is the success rate? Because I'm really, especially now with everything that is happening, you must be very busy, because a lot of people
Mm,
identify themselves with their work, with their status, social status, and now all of this has been basically destroyed for a certain time. I mean, it's going to come back, obviously.
yeah.
How do you deal with all these, people with all these baggages coming to you?
Well, number one, I look at it, one, it's an honor for me that
Mm-hmm.
anyone would want to come and unpack their luggage with me.
Mm-hmm.
I look at it like that because we all have bags that's
Mm-hmm.
packed and they all need to be unpacked. And unpacking them is not an easy chore to do. And so I first of all consider it a privilege and an honor to do it. And I have had a pretty good success rate with
Mm-hmm.
people who are really identifying for me, that is the success of the ministry is
Mm-hmm.
getting you to identify what it is That's
Mhm.
half the battle. And then the other half is you choosing to move. So
Mhm.
identifying everybody, I can tell you this, most people who deal with rejection also deal with abandonment. If they
Mhm.
come together like twins.
Mhm.
When you see one, the other shows up. So
Mhm.
don't think that if I'm dealing with rejection, abandonment is probably right around the corner or next door and
Mhm.
looking to move into the spot that rejection just moved out of. So
Mhm.
that's why you have to unpack this stuff, and that's why so many layers to it. And I also like the fact that and say that. Um, I don't want people to point the finger at someone else.
Mhm. Mhm.
You have to take responsibility for you. And that's
Mhm.
all we're going to deal with. You can tell me how bad it was with you growing up. You can tell me all of those things because you do need to release it. But what we're not going to do is focus on the offender. We're not
Mhm.
going to spend a lot of time on focusing on that person because they could be deceased. In my case, that person was deceased. So
Mhm.
there is no, you can't go get them up and make them
Mhm.
apologize. You can't
Mhm.
get that. And understanding this, once you identify this and once you come to grips with it, knowing that you may never receive an apology, you may
Mhm.
never get what you think you're due or what you're owed, but we want to accept that. We want
Mhm.
to accept that if I never hear you say I'm sorry, I still can forgive you. If I never hear you tell me you did me wrong, in my heart, I know how to forgive you and release you so I can heal and I can
Mhm.
go grow because unforgiveness hurts you.
Mhm. Mhm.
The other
Mhm.
person is still living their lives
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
may or may not have even given you a second thought,
Mhm. Mhm.
but
And
you're
that's
hurting.
and that's what we need to understand is that it's all about us. We are
Yes.
in control. Whatever people do to us, it's our own reaction. It's how we react to it that's going to be the most important thing, the most important step in us dealing with it. Because if we're really waiting for somebody else or the other person to come and, like you said, apologize and say I'm sorry, it means that we will never heal at all.
Yes.
And it becomes actually a threat. We become a threat to ourselves, and that's really difficult. So I
Yeah.
mean, it's one thing to be able to to get the help and address it, but you mentioned at the beginning that you still have those triggers. So how do you deal with the triggers? um,
Yeah, that's the part. I wish I could tell you that the triggers go away. They do
mhm,
not. And I think they're good.
mhm,
Triggers are good. And here's why. One, I had to learn to think about it that way and not
mhm,
to think about the trigger as something so detrimental or negative to me. I had
mhm,
to learn to think about the trigger and say, if if someone says something to me and
mhm,
I felt the sting of the rejection, it just makes me go back to the mirror and
mhm,
say, it's time to move. You have to move from this place. You cannot stay here
mhm,
because it lets me know there's still more healing that needs to be done. So don't look at a trigger in your life as a bad thing.
mhm,
Look at it on the other side of this, that God is trying to tap you gently and say, there's still more work we need to do right here. We need to revisit this, and let's go back to that mirror and look back in the mirror, and let's have some more self-talk and say we have to move from here. No
mhm,
matter how they said it, no matter how you interpreted it, let's not stay there. Okay? We
mhm,
cannot pitch a tent. We cannot build a house where a tent was just meant to be. So
mhm,
this is not a place of permanency. We have to
mhm.
leave.
And I think that's the key thing in what you said is that it's not permanent. It's always we always moving, and as soon as we settle, that's when the problem is. So when those triggers are actually coming and we settle there, that's when we start to to have problems. and we have to keep moving. We have to keep going, because otherwise we can get trapped again, and
Yes.
in this haunted house that you mentioned just before. So let's have a break, and we'll come back and continue our really great conversation. I really enjoyed the conversation today on rejection and abandonment. So don't go anywhere. I hope you are enjoying as I am today, and you really learning a lot, and you're gonna actually get to implement, especially if you're feeling rejected right now or abandoned, and you're gonna get to implement or get in contact with Pastor Sharon at some point if you feel like it's too difficult. But don't go anywhere. We're just having a short break, and we'll be back. So we are back. We are back with Pastor Sharon, and we are focusing on rejection and abandonment today. Pastor Sharon, one question that I have, because you mentioned before that you really started to notice this rejection things coming up when you were still quite young, 20s, in your 20s. And so we have, with everything that is happening right now, all the disruption, the uncertainty, we have young people as well, and how do you think we can prepare them to have the right mindset to look at, to not fall into the trap of this rejection and abandonment that we are talking about?
So I have not teenagers anymore. My youngest son is 26, turning 27.
Mhm,
And so I always look at him and his life, and I think a lot about those who are millennials and
mhm,
how it's easy to get sucked into the trap of being someone else to fit in the
mhm,
crowd and not being confident of who you are, or not knowing who you are and having your own identity, and it's being difficult to flow and to move in society among your peers. And so one of the things that I would say is that first, let's get a base on who you are
mhm,
so that no one else can talk you out of being you. I
mhm,
see that a lot of times people that age, because I did that. I became
mhm,
a chameleon and I blended in with everyone else. I became everything for everyone and did not know who I was. So let's start a base of on knowing who you are first, and then being confident and sure and rooted in who you are, so that when you're exposed to something else, even though you think it looks good, even though you think you may want to try it, you won't drift away from the knowledge base of who you are
mhm,
really,
mhm,
who you
mhm,
are at your core. And then I say to younger people, if you are struggling with knowing who you are at your core, don't immerse yourself with people who are so opinionated. Why? Because you'll begin to be the chameleon and take on
mhm,
their opinions and their thought patterns. You have to get familiar with you, know who you are, what you do and do not like, and then start to immerse yourself around those who think the way you do.
mhm,
And that way, it will help you to minimize being stuck in the
Mm-hmm.
rat race of becoming everything to everybody
Mm-hmm.
and not really being true to you.
And that's and that can be very difficult right now because it's a very competitive environment, and there are certain criteria that are forced to especially to all of us, the media, and all kind of things. So it's
Yeah.
pretty difficult to differentiate, what's the reality and what is really about us. And that's a challenge, I think, for the new generation, even more for them, and also for us. And which bring me to my next question, which is, we talk about diversity, we talk about inclusion, but yet we still have the rejection and the abandonment feeling that is really strong. So how do you what's your opinion, especially when we talk about race? What is your opinion to address that? Because especially when you are discriminated, you can start to feel like your self-esteem can start to go very low, and like you said, you can start to become a chameleon and don't really know who you are anymore, because what it's portrays that what you represent is not good, or is you're completely rejected. So how do you think we can address that? Because that's a key one that actually lead to rejection and
Yes.
abandonment. Yeah.
Well, one of the things for me is that whatever your values are in life, I believe that you need to lean strongly and heavily towards those.
Mm-hmm.
And number one, people are people. Everybody has an opinion, and no matter what their opinion is of you, it does not change who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and as far as racism, my God, we are really, really dealing with it heavily right now with all of the situations happening with the killings and
Mm-hmm.
Black Lives Matter and things of that nature. And when people say Black Lives Matter, it doesn't negate that all lives matter. All lives do matter. And I think just
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
me, I want to treat people the way I want to be treated. So if you can live by the golden rule, as they call it, if you can live by that, then you can knock racism down. If you can keep in mind that I don't want you to look at me because of my brown skin and discount me for doing something, I wouldn't look at you with your
Mm-hmm.
white skin and discount you for who you are
Mm-hmm.
or what you could bring to the table. If we can get
Mm-hmm.
beyond that and and simply treat people like you want to be treated, it's not rocket
Mm-hmm.
science. It really isn't. If you don't want to be spit at, cursed at, yelled at, beat up on, then don't do it to someone else. If you don't want
Mm-hmm.
your children shot down in the street, then don't shoot other people's children.
Mm-hmm.
Don't, if you can just start looking at it from a simplistic way and stop making it so political. If you don't want it done to you, then don't do it to someone else
Mm-hmm.
because it hurts. It hurts when people call you out of your name.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
hurts the mother who has to bury their children, the father who has to go and identify their child at the morgue. That hurts. And if it's done to you, it's going to hurt you too. And
Mm-hmm.
so if we start looking at things and saying, just don't treat me, treat people like you want to be treated.
Mm-hmm. 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 And that's a very powerful statement, because sometimes we do things to people that we actually wouldn't want to have to deal with, and it's important that we reflect back and say, okay, if I do this, do I want somebody to do this to me? And start there, because sometimes people just don't think they do what the horrible things, and then when it comes back, because it always come back at some point, they like, oh, okay, they're not prepared. But yeah, but you actually put you started, you planted the seeds, and now they actually growing, and they're
Mhm.
coming back to you. You're getting back what you just planted. So
That's true.
and I think there's a lot, and it comes down also to a lot of the system that are actually that we are growing into. I mean, there's a, and I see that, Karen mentioned here the domestication. Most of us don't know who we are due to
Right.
domestication of system, and that's really the strong part. And how do we fight that? Because there's domestication everywhere, basically
Everywhere.
everywhere. So how do we start to, you know, get out of this domestication? Because we know that it's not always good, and that's why we have a lot of people with, mental illness, or not loving themselves and being rejected, and it actually contribute more to the subject that we are talking today than less. So how do
Yes.
you think we can address that? um, and is it too late, or
Ugh.
still have we still have an opportunity to do something about it?
Wow. Well, de-domestication, I don't know if we're going to conquer that beast. Segregation, we still live in a segregated world. I'm
Mm-hmm,
not sure. I want to say with confidence that through God we can do all things and we can triumph over this stuff. But I want
mm-hmm,
to be realistic here. Not everybody thinks the same.
mm-hmm,
And because they don't, and because their superiority in the world and inferiority in the world and classism in the world and all of these things that we have to deal with, because it is a reality no matter where you live, there is
mm-hmm,
classism. And
mm-hmm,
so that's why I think I have to go back to your code of ethics, your
mm-hmm,
belief system, and knowing who you are and who you are becoming, and that person that you want to be is
mm-hmm,
not somebody who spews out violence out of their mouth, who demonstrates violently. It has to start with the individual.
mm-hmm,
It does. It has to start with the individual. And I can only focus on me and say that I want to be the type of person that sticks to the code and the ethics
mm-hmm,
that I believe in, and
mm-hmm,
that helps to keep me on a moral ground, whatever that may be for you. Um, but it has to start here, and it has
mm-hmm,
to start with people individually, and that's how it's going to spread collectively. But do I think we're going to do I think in my lifetime, before I
mm-hmm,
leave this earth, that I will see declassification in life, that I will see non domestication, that I will see these things? No. Do I think I'll never see racism, or racism will stop before I leave this world? Absolutely not. I don't.
mm-hmm,
And one of the reasons I believe it is because a lot of people get to move up
mm-hmm,
uh, on these types of things,
mm-hmm,
politically, socially, class wise, economically. So there's going to, for lack of better words, I'm going to just go to the scripture and say that the poor you will have with you always. There was classism in the Bible. There was segregation in the Bible,
mm-hmm,
and that dates back to many moons ago. Do I think we're going to change that? No, I
mm-hmm.
don't. I don't, and
Yeah.
I don't even have hope that there will be a better USA or a better nation. I don't have hope for that. I just have hope for my part and what I can do and how I can be a decent and moral person, and how I want to treat people and
Mm-hmm,
living by my ethics and my belief system, because I can't control what anybody my next door neighbor does. I cannot. I can only suggest that they would do things differently, but my
mm-hmm,
suggestion is just that, a
mm-hmm,
suggestion. Maybe they will take it and maybe they won't.
mm-hmm,
And the people who are higher up that make the decisions that we put into a position, if we don't like it, then we need to vote them out,
mm-hmm,
because that's the way that the United States is built. You can vote people in and you can vote them out. And so
Mhm.
if we don't like what we see politically, then we have a voice and we need to vote and make our voice be heard. But I really don't think it'll go away.
Mhm. And it comes down, I mean, what you said, to personal power, because at the end of the day, and you said, if you don't like this, you have to vote it out. Sometimes people don't understand the power that they have.
Yeah.
And that's why we are in this situation, because we have power. We are the leaders that we are looking for. Why are we waiting for other leaders? Because that's really where it starts. Because and it comes down to what you were saying about, the self-esteem. We don't believe in ourselves. We don't really know who we are, and yet we are powerful, especially with God's strength that is
Yes.
given to us. We are so powerful, but we let this power go because we are distracted by what's outside, and we forget completely who we are. We forget completely the power that we have, and we forget at the end to use this power to start to become the leaders that we are looking for, because we can only drive a process, and then this process will create a ripple effect, and then we start to create new leaders who look like us. And I think that's the power of all of this, is that especially when you are with God, you have this power, and you
Yes.
have to use it, and be really confident that this power is there, and you can use it effectively and positively to drive a lot of things that are probably very strongly rooted, but still you can do something. And I think that's what that's my position, in a way, is that sometimes we don't actually realize, because of this domestication and this system where there's a ranking or anything. We always think, okay, some people are leaders and I'm not a leader. No, we are all leaders where we are,
Yes.
and we have to use that and start to lead, really,
Mhm.
to get, people to follow, because it just takes, the starting point to continue. So
Yeah.
really, really a very powerful conversation. And I just wanted to ask you, because with all of what you do, you also took time to write. And one of the book that I saw that you are part of is the Stepping into Your Territory. So can you talk a little bit about it, and how did you come to becoming an author, and what is really the message that you brought into this particular collaboration?
Sure. So, stepping into our territory edition two, I have the privilege of being a co author of this great book. And it is coming soon, ladies and gentlemen. So, be on the lookout for that. I do believe sometime in September it will be launched. So, keep an eye out for that. But the book collaboration actually came about. So, I didn't know Janelle, but my Janelle Harris, who is the visionary
Mhm,
author of the book,
mhm,
of both one and two. But my sister told me that she was going to be a part of a collaboration. And believe it or not, I have been praying and saying I wanted to expand my
mhm,
territory. I wanted to um, take my ministry abroad, and I wanted to be able to touch people in other countries and on other
mhm,
continents. And so when I spoke to Janelle and she told me all of what was going to take place, and that I would meet a beautiful woman like you and other women who are doing great things in their regions, and I said I have to be a part of this. And
mhm,
so the fact that the book is named Stepping into Our Territory really speaks to me, because
mhm,
it is a new vast territory that I am launching into the deep, so to speak, and seeing what will happen. And it's great for me because it's a place that I've never been. And sometimes it can be a bit frightening going to the unknown and not
Mhm,
knowing what to expect. But my experience here and with this book collaboration has been phenomenal.
mhm,
Been some wonderful women that we're collaborating with, and I can't wait to read their stories because, of course, I haven't read their stories yet. So
mhm,
I only know what mine was, that the part
mhm,
that I wrote, but I'm excited about it. Can't wait for the launch and the release of the book. And I really believe it'll help a lot of people during this time and this
mhm,
during this pandemic that we're going through. And one thing that I want to really drive home is that even though this happened during a pandemic, it did not stop it.
mhm,
It did not stop the powerful work that Janelle envisioned, nor the other women who are
mhm,
great leaders in their own rights. It did not stop us from pushing. It
mhm,
actually drove us to push a little harder. It gave us the time because most of us were in isolation and lockdown. So it
mhm.
gave us the time to be able to pour our hearts out into this project.
Fantastic. So the book is coming soon. For those listening, don't miss out. It's gonna be something amazing from some amazing woman. Really, uh, telling us how they've been able to step into their territory and really take things, up, and not back down on anything that they had to actually face, because some of them have faced some real hardship, and like Pastor Sharon was saying, it didn't stop them. So I mean, we're getting now to the end of the show, and one thing that you really wanted to, I always want to ask my guests is, because a lot of them have, they accomplish so much and they do so much, and I'm always curious to know what is, the legacy that they want to leave. And I'm going to ask you the same question, Pastor Sharon. What is the legacy that you want to leave?
Oh my goodness. I'm glad you asked that
Mm-hmm,
because I always say that I want to leave a legacy of prayer. Prayer
mm-hmm,
moves mountains and prayer changes you. That's the most important part of the prayer
mm-hmm,
is it changes me. And I
mm-hmm,
want to leave a legacy of that. Prayer is important to me. And I know that it has helped to rearrange my entire mindset and my life. And I know that it's a great and a rich legacy to leave. Prayer can do things that no man can do.
mm-hmm.
It can it can expose you to things that you never believed you could be exposed to. And it can take you places that you never thought you could go. And so that's the main legacy that I want to leave is prayer.
Wow, that's just beautiful and powerful at the same time, because we don't sometimes we don't take prayer seriously. And like you said, prayer is very powerful. It's
Oh yeah.
very powerful, and for those who experience it, they know that prayer actually helps you to make your dreams come true.
Mhm.
And if you really stick to it, if you're really honest about it, and really, do the work, you gonna get and understand the power of prayer. So Pastor Sharon wants to leave a legacy of prayer. So make sure you connect with Pastor Sharon. And I wanted to know, how do people can connect with you, and so if they want to understand a little bit more about the root of rejection and abandonment, because obviously in 1 hour it's not really possible to talk about everything in detail. But
Yeah.
also, if they really want to, because being a pastor, they probably want to know exactly how you can help them as well. So how do they connect with you?
Well, you can connect with me in multiple ways. Of course, on social media, I'm under Elder Chislom on social media, which is Facebook as well as Instagram. And the church that I am proud to pastor is Rehoboth Church, a place for God's people. And we are there on Facebook because that's how we're meeting. We're not a traditional church, so we're not going to be a church in a steeple with building and chairs. We're not that
Mhm,
type of church. We're going to go house to house and minister to people. But during this pandemic, we are on Facebook. So you can find us at Rehoboth Church on Facebook as well. And come on in. It's no thing for us is membership and all of that. No, we just want to minister the word of God to the people of God, to people who are broken, who are hurting, who
Mhm.
absolutely need the word of God. And that's what's going to inspire you. You can also visit us at our website, which is
Mhm.
www.sdcministries.com.
Mhm.
There
So,
you can find books and services and things like that that I offer.
That's fantastic, and really, just a last round on in the comment, so you can begin breaking down the barrier by being the change we desire. Yes, you have to be the leader that you're looking for,
Yeah.
and we have Sophie. Sophie's watching from
Hi,
Cameroon in West
Sophie.
Africa, so prayer works, and she's her man. Prayer can do what no man can do, and she's been inspired today and thanking you
Thank
for
you.
what you've done. So before we
Oh,
leave, there are
Sophie.
few things that I really want to share. There's the magazine that came out as well. So that's the first edition, and the magazine. So it's the August magazine. We publish every 2 months. So the next magazine will be published on the 1st of October. So that we already working on a magnificent edition. So that's one, and it's on sale. So I'm going to share next week all the link to be able for you if you want to order a copy, because it's been free
Definitely.
so far, and that's good. There's the book, managed by Coach Rose, and I'm one of the co-author. I'm gonna talk. So it's the devotional book, 20 Voice of Wisdom. So I'm writing on Abraham, and I hope that you're gonna be inspired. So orders have started. So I'm gonna also post a little bit more information on social media if you follow me. I also have still my book available as well, Stepping into Your Greatness. That's a book that I wrote 4 years ago, but very, very much of actuality, and really, help you to become, the best that you can be, building on those 12 rules that I've used myself and have basically, put into a very small book, which you can read in few hours, in a way. And then there's also happening from Monica, Motivate. So there's the Global Supplier Diversity Conference, which is going virtual this time. So no need to travel to Atlanta, and you can join virtually. It's on September 24th. So a lot's happening, and before we leave, I really want to have, a last message from you, Pastor Sharon. What is the message that you want to leave us with today?
Ooh, so the message I would love to leave is that you can change your address, but it's so much more important for you to move. I need you to move from the way you used to see things into the way that God sees things. And mainly, move from the way that you saw or see yourself to the way that God sees you, because He's your creator. He's the one who has constructed the masterpiece that you are, and there's greatness on the inside of you. Why not let it shine? Why not let it be seen for the world to see that look at what God has created? It's you, and you are the masterpiece for Him.
Great, great, great. So you are the masterpiece that God has created. So always have it, in your head, because you're not what people are saying. You're what God has created you to be. And you are a masterpiece. And understand that, there's no limitation with God. You are unlimited, and He's there to provide everything So you are the one leading your own life, and you are in, you are on the driving seat. So don't look outside, don't look anywhere. Look inside and look to God and get to go to the next level of your greatness. And I thank you so much, Pastor Sharon, for being with us
Mm.
today and for this very positive and beautiful message that you leave us with. And I hope that the audience will live up to it, because, like you said, we are all masterpiece, and we need to really act upon, and know that that's what it is. That's the reality and nothing else. So thank you very much. And for the audience, that's a bye-bye. I'll be back on Friday with a gentleman from Scotland, and we're going to talk about
Oh,
leadership. He's actually Dutch, but living in Scotland. So it's going to
okay.
be interesting as well to know exactly, what leadership is, from his point of view, because he's also into leadership. So thank you very much, and have a great day, Pastor Sharon. And bye bye to everybody who've been able to tune in. And for people who are going to watch the replay, don't hesitate to connect with Pastor Sharon to have
Yeah.
more information if you need it, or if you want to go through me, I'm open and I'll connect you to Pastor Sharon. So
Thank you.
take care. God bless you all, and see you all on Friday.
Bye bye.